Hey, what's up guys? It's Jonathan here. So in past videos, I've discussed the importance of having a budget and how to use a budget effectively, but it's come to my attention that I haven't made a video on how to actually make a budget. Budgets are very important tools to build wealth because they allow you to track where your money is going and allow you to make a plan of where your money will go. Basically, a budget is when you assign your dollar jobs. And when you assign your dollar jobs, they could work a lot more efficiently for you. So in this video, I'm gonna give you a step-by-step rundown on how to create a budget. I'll also make a sample budget with you guys as well. And all I ask for in return is that you smash the like button down below. It greatly helps out the channel and the YouTube algorithm. So let's get right into the video. So the first step you must take is that you must track all your expenses for 1 month. So this can be done multiple different ways. If you're somebody who normally uses debit cards or credit cards, that month, what you might want to do is only exclusively use one credit card or one debit card for all your expenses. So at the end of the month, your statement will show you every single thing that you've spent money on for the month. If you're someone who likes to use cash to buy things, if you have an iPhone or something like that, you could use the Notes app and you could just write a quick little one-line note about how much you spent, where you spent it at, and what you spent it on. And doing this will help you create the next steps of your budget. So the second step you want to take when creating a budget is that you want to create categories for your budget. So now since you have a list, all the expenses you incurred within a month, you basically want to go and group those expenses based on what category they're in. So maybe you have expenses that you would categorize as groceries. Maybe you have another set of expenses that you categorize as eating out. And then maybe you'll have another category that you categorize as entertainment expenses, so on, and so on. Pretty much you want to categorize them in a way where you'll remember what goes into what category. So it doesn't have to necessarily make sense to everyone else around you. It just needs to make sense to you, or you and your partner, or you and your spouse, depending on who you share your finances with, if anyone. For the next couple of steps to making a budget, we're actually gonna head into my computer. So let's go in there now. So we're gonna use this budget template to create a sample budget. This kind of budget that I'm gonna be making is called a zero-sum budget. And basically what that is that the bottom line of your budget is $0. So that means that every dollar of income that you have is accounted to either expenses or savings. So let's start by me first putting in my take-home pay. Let's say for this sample budget that my take-home pay is for my job is $4,000 a month. So I'm going to put $4,000 inside this column here. And then let's say I have some rental real estate and it kicks me off a little bit of cash flow, but not a lot. Let's just call that $200 a month. Let's just say, for example. And then let's just say I have no other sources of income, so we'll put a 0 here. And this budget template automatically adds up all my income to show that my total income is $4,200 a month. So the next thing after that is we're going to want to put in expenses. Since you've tracked how much money you spend on the different categories throughout the month, now this is your chance to put it into a budget. So typically what I'll do is if I looked at a month of expenses, I'll get however much I spent in a month, and I'll multiply that by 110% or 1.1. And the reason for doing that is to give you a little bit of a buffer. So just in case if maybe the 1 month that you decided to record was February, which is the shortest month of the year, then you're executing on a month where there's 31 days in a year, then that might affect your budget. So I usually like to put a little bit of a 10 to 15% buffer in my budget depending on the line item. Okay, so the first thing we're going to focus on when it comes to expenses is initial savings. And what I mean by that is how much money do you want to save no matter what. So if you watch some of my other videos, you would have heard me say that it's very important that you pay yourself first. So the first expense you're going to account for is your savings. So for me personally, I always aim to save at minimum 20% of my income. I know that could be a stretch for certain people, but really you should be striving to save at minimum 10% of your income, like absolute bare minimum. But for me personally, my minimum is around 20%. So I'm going to put in 20% or 0.2. So I'll change this to show percentages. so it's not so confusing. So that means that for my $4,200 a month income, I'm going to save about $840 a month. I'm going to put in my other expenses that I have as well. These are some categories that I have in my personal budget, but you should feel free to customize any way you see fit. So for me, housing usually stays about the same in my budget. So for this example, I'll use $1,000 for housing, and that would be either rent or mortgage or whatever your housing expense is. And usually, for most people, that usually doesn't fluctuate very much. So there's no point of you put it in a 10% buffer on an expense like that. Utilities, on the other hand, tend to fluctuate between the season. So maybe in the summer, you might spend more on electricity, but in the winter, you might spend more on gas because you gotta heat up your place. So for utilities, what I would do is I'm going to hit the plus button, and then I'm going to put, so for me, I usually it'll cost me about $100 a month for utilities. So I'll put $100 here. I'll multiply by 110%. And pretty much that's just to account for any fluctuations in utility prices. So I enter that. That will be $110. Then next expense is transportation. In this budget, we're going to call transportation. Generally, what I put in transportation would be anything like car payment, gas, maintenance, insurance, any expense related to transportation, I would put it into this category. So for this budget, I'm going to use $500, and then I'm going to multiply it by 10% again, because it can fluctuate over time. So next category for me is food. So I'm not sure if you've been able to tell through the video, but I'm a pretty big guy and I like to eat pretty good food as well. For me, with the food budget, I actually like to add a buffer of more 15% because I generally tend to always touch the ceiling of this budget category. So for me, what I'll do is I'll put the food budget in at about $500, and then I'll multiply it by 115% to represent that 15% buffer I like on my food budget. That comes out to $575. Gym budget, usually my gym budget doesn't change, really it's just for my gym membership. And for this budget, let's use $25 as that balance. Then home care for me is like stuff like to clean up the house, like any cleaning supplies or things like that. I usually like to budget out about $50 a month for that. And that usually doesn't fluctuate very much. So I just keep it as that. Personal care, that's like haircuts, shampoos, things to take care of myself and my parents. I'll just put another $50 there. That usually doesn't fluctuate from month to month because I usually get my haircuts at the same time. I usually go, if I buy a bottle of shampoo, it usually lasts me a certain amount of time. So these are a little bit more easier to budget. They don't fluctuate as much. Shopping, for this example, I'll just use $75 a month. I'll just use $75 a month. Again, this part of my budget usually doesn't fluctuate very much either for me. But if it does for you, you put like a 10 to 15% addition onto it just to make sure that you're good. Entertainment, again, for me, doesn't really fluctuate very much. I'm not someone to go out to like the movies or things like that. I usually like to stay at home. So again, I'm going to keep this at $50. I'm going to put this at $50 a month, and I won't put a multiplier in there. Now, charity, on the other hand, I like to give 10% of my income to charity. So I will actually get my income, my total income here. So +, total income, which is all of this added up together. And I'll multiply it by 10. And that gives me $420 a month, which kind of makes sense. You just take off one of the zeros. But anyways, and then for others and miscellaneous, this is also another part of the buffer for your entire budget. I usually just like to put maybe about, $150. So my total expenses come out to be $38.95. So my income is $4,200. My expenses are $38.95. So my initial savings, which is the number up here, which was 20% of my take-home income, is $840. That represents a part of my savings. Now, like I said, this is a zero-sum budget. So at the end of the day, I mean, at the bottom of the budget, it should be $0. So every dollar should be accounted for. So any extra money I have in my budget, I like to put it into savings as well. So I have my 20%, which is like my bare minimum. And then anything extra, I like to put into savings as well. So I have this column called additional savings. And both these columns auto-populate, so you don't need to adjust them. And the additional savings is basically my total income minus my total expenses. And that's how I got my additional income. My additional savings, I should say. So then when I add these two numbers up, this is my total savings amount right here. So if I was to get my total income and subtract it by my total expenses and subtract it by my total savings as well, I should get $0. And that's a zero-sum budget. So making a budget isn't very hard, but a lot of people don't do it. And making a budget is very critical if you ever want to build any massive amount of wealth. You have to know where your dollars are going to be able to manage your money efficiently. And I hope that this step-by-step guide on how to make a budget was helpful and provides value. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It greatly helps out the channel. If you like my perspective or way I explain things, I also encourage you to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified anytime I post a new video. If you have any questions or comments, I encourage you to leave them in the comment section down below. I try to respond to every comment. Also, while you're down there, check out the link for Webull where you can get free stocks after you deposit $100, with 2 of those stocks being worth up to $1,600 each. Also, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I try to post there every day. And thank you for watching. Until next time.